I am not bitter about being persecuted in prison, but I'll be bitter if they want to stop me from speaking out the experiences that I faced on their own faces. His re-election is still clouded in extreme controversy. No one has endorsed him. Zimbabweans are suffering. 85% of our population is still unemployed. 49% of our people in the recent international survey said that they are living under extreme poverty. I'm not afraid of death at all, completely, to tell you the truth, on the basis that I know I stand on the truth.
Mr. Job Sikhala, thank you very much for joining us here at Africa Uncensored.
No, thank you very much, John Allan, for inviting me to this important interview.
I appreciate that. Now, we're speaking in the wake of a very, very, I want to say, controversial speech, at least to Zimbabweans, that you made at the Geneva Summit on human rights and democracy.
Mnangagwa's government systematically destroyed me politically, economically, and socially. I came out and found everything ruined.
There's been huge reactions back in Zimbabwe, including calls for your arrest and possibly even worse. What's your reaction to how your speech was received back home?
The first thing is that let me dispel your characterization of the speech as controversial. It is not controversial at all.
Yeah, I said controversial to Zimbabweans because as a Kenyan, these things are said quite often.
It is not controversial to Zimbabweans. It is only controversial to the perpetrators of human rights abuses and the oppressors of our nation. They are the ones who did not receive this speech with honor that it deserves. The speech has been welcomed by all Zimbabweans for the truth that I spoke at the Geneva Summit. Every Zimbabwean, as far as I know, is that, they are with me. I spoke the truth. I did not exaggerate anything. Every statement in that speech is the truth. There is nothing that is controversial about it. So the reaction that you are currently noticing from state actors is that they have been exposed and the truth has been exposed. That's why they are showing signs of anger. And I'm not even surprised. I expected it. When you live in an oppressive, tyrannical regime, you understand the way how dictators and the people who oppress their own citizens and subjects react when they are exposed at an international stage. So I'm not surprised at all.
You're just calling Emerson Mnangagwa and ZANU-PF a dictatorial regime, right? I just want to get that clearly, because in his support base and to some people, maybe even internationally that support him, he's a democratically elected president of Zimbabwe.
The problem with that is that there is a lot of controversy vis-a-vis his re-election during the previous elections. We all know that all credible election observers who came to Zimbabwe during the 23rd of August 2023 general elections, their verdict was very clear that the elections did not meet up standards of a free and fair election, that the elections were not in accordance with the dictates of a democratic electoral outcome. And this was not only pronounced by some international observers that are very far from our own borders, but the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, which is one of the most important regional bodies where we are a member to, also gave their verdict that the elections were not free and fair and were not held within the framework of a free and democratic elections. So his re-election is still clouded in extreme controversy. No one has endorsed him, not only SADC, but all international observers, including the African Union, the Commonwealth Observer Mission that came, the European Union Observer Mission, and all other, the Jimmy Carter Foundation that came also to observe those elections. So those elections have been condemned by everyone. And all other organizations in Zimbabwe have also condemned those elections as not having been free and fair.
Well, not everyone. I mean, our president, William Ruto, congratulated him on his win, and there are a number of other leaders across the continent who did. I want your quick reaction to those kinds of congratulations before we now go back to some of the issues that I wanted to get into with your speech. What's your reaction? I mean, if all of these different parties do
some
that,
of these congratulatory messages that you are talking about is an act of deception. I remember that after President Ruto won his elections, I was in prison at that material time. The first person to congratulate him was Emmerson Mnangagwa, despite still the initial controversies that were being thrown in Kenya about the electoral outcome. And he was the first person to come during the period of the swearing in of President Ruto. But if you want to see the trick of it and the deception of it, is that during the period of Emmerson Mnangagwa swearing in Zimbabwe, President Ruto did not turn up. He did send Musaila Mudavadi to come there. You know, Kenya was not represented at the head of state level, and to show and demonstrate to you that deep down himself he knows that things were not done properly in Zimbabwe. If he believed in that, he could have been the first persons to come and you know, accompany other people who came. Even in the Southern Africa Development Community SADC, only 3 heads of state came. That from Mozambique, Felix Tshisekedi and Cyril Ramaphosa, out of 16 heads of state. So it should inform you that the elections in Zimbabwe still is an outstanding subject within the citizens of our country.
So to you, Mnangagwa,
they think that the electoral process was manipulated and does not reflect the will of the people.
To you, Emmerson Mnangagwa is a leader without the people's mandate.
But I could not give a definitive, you know, position on that, on the basis that I did not participate in those elections. I was in prison. What I'm only having is some information that I plated through the moment when I was released from prison to realize what is the general feeling and sentiments of the general population of Zimbabwe and also the people in the international community. I've widely traveled in quite a number of many African countries as soon as I come out of prison. I've also traveled in quite a number of many countries in Western Europe, and this issue is arising at every engagement that I conducted.
Speaking of engagements, let's return to your speech a little bit. And in that speech, you predicted that there'd be calls for your arrest. And that's come to pass. There have been calls from within quarters of the ZANU-PF calling for your arrest and possibly even worse. Job Sikhala, do you fear for your life?
I have never been, you know, afraid about my life. On the basis that me and you, John, we know who the owner of life is. The owner of life is God. God is the only one who will know our destiny, how he created us and how he will terminate us from earth. So whatever comes out through our political engagements and political processes could have been planned by God. So basically, I'm not afraid of death at all, completely, to tell you the truth, on the basis that I know I stand on the truth. I don't exaggerate anything. Everything that I say is truthful. Why my statement in Geneva pained so much the tyrant back home is on the basis that I spoke the truth. And we know that truth is always painful to everyone. So that's why they are angry, and I understand where they are coming from, and I'm not surprised because I know them. I know and understand the character of my enemies in Zimbabwe. I know their thought and their thought process and what they do. So specifically, that's it.
Okay. You spent 595 days prior to your trial in prison. And in that time, you also fell very ill. You know, there were a number of things that happened to you physically that could demoralize anybody, much less someone who's been an opposition stalwart. And now you're out of the country. You're in Kenya, but obviously your travel itinerary is taking you, I think, even a few hours from now elsewhere. Are you going to be going back to Zimbabwe, or are you going to seek refuge elsewhere as you decide what your political future is?
I will never ever be a refugee or exiled anywhere. Zimbabwe is my country. I'll go back to my country. If they want to arrest me, so be it. I will be arrested and saving in Zimbabwe. If they want to kill me, they will kill me in Zimbabwe. I'm going back home. There is no way I will seek refugee anywhere. I am rooted in Zimbabwe. There is no way I will seek refugee anywhere. Why should I seek refugee anywhere when I am a Zimbabwean and a person who has his roots and the home, house, village there in Zimbabwe? I will not go anywhere. I'm going back to Zimbabwe to go and proceed with my profession as a lawyer, and also proceed with my human rights work as a human rights lawyer. I'll continue doing my work in Zimbabwe. I'm going back as soon as I complete both my African itinerary, where I'm meeting many political players, many diplomats, and a lot of many human rights organizations and so forth. And also, don't forget that I'm also on medication at the present moment because of the illness that I caught when I was in prison. My doctors are still attending to me. Tomorrow, I'm going to be with my medical team to see the last medical examination that they want to do on me. If they give me, if they say that I'm okay, I'll definitely go back to Zimbabwe as soon as I'm given a clean bill of health.
Bill of health. Your answer was very interesting. You said you're definitely going back to Zimbabwe.
Sure.
But to continue your work as a lawyer and in the human rights space. But Job Sikhala is more than a human rights lawyer. He's also a former legislator, a politician who's been very close to the CCC. Yeah. What is your future plan in terms of the political animal, Job Sikhala?
No, at the present moment, I am satisfied with my role that I'm playing as the chairperson of the Zimbabwe National Democratic Working Group. It is a congregation of different constituent bodies, progressive forces in our country. We have come together and say, how do we chart the way forward for our country? One mainly on the role on the future of our nation. What should we do as Zimbabweans for us to be able to prosecute our struggle and the destiny of our nation? So basically, we later discovered that there was now a divorce between the politicians' actions and what the masses of our people are thinking. Political leaders are used to dictating to the masses of the people and their followers. So we are now reversing the gear, where we understand that every successful struggle that has been waged throughout the world against the tyranny and dictatorship and any form of oppression has been successfully carried out by the masses. The masses must be the owners and the couriers of the destiny of their own countries. They must be the ones that carry the struggle themselves.
Is that why?
So the program of the National Democratic Working Group is for it to go down, re-engage and dialogue with the citizens of our country, with the masses of our country, in quest for them to be given the way forward on how we are going to tackle the Zimbabwean question.
Yeah. Is that why the working group is a movement and not a political party?
It's not a political party, it's a movement. It's a movement which is in a consultative process to ask the citizens of our country on the way forward about their nation. These consultations are going to mutate into the holding of the National Democratic People's Convention. There will be a National People's Convention which will have representatives from each and every ward in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is 1,970 wards. So each and every ward will elect one representative who will come and speak to the issues that have been raised during the period of the consultative process at the National Convention. And Zimbabwe has 210 constituencies. So each constituency has been dissected as a district. So each constituency will send 10 people to the National People's Democratic Convention, which means it will be 2,000 1,100 in addition to the 1,970 from the wards. And the Zimbabwe is 10 provinces. Each province will send 20 persons. There will also be representatives that will come from different constituent bodies that constitute the National Democratic Working Group. Because the National Democratic Working Group is made up of people from labor, people from students, people from informal sector, people from business persons, people from churches, and many, many, many other organizations, and including progressive political organizations in Zimbabwe. So they will also send delegates to the National People's Convention. The National People's Convention will have delegates of around 5,000.
It sounds a lot like political organizing, but not under the auspices of a political party.
It's not political organization as such. It is the coalescing of ideas of the thought process of the people of Zimbabwe. At the National People's Democratic Convention is where they are going to tell us what we should do about our country. Okay. What will be the way forward? What should we do? If they will say, no, we should form a political organization to contest for political power and so forth, it will be up to them. Yeah. But we should never again dictate for the people. Never again should political leaders dictate their thoughts to the masses of our people. The masses of our people must carry the destiny of our country, where we should go as a nation without us compromising that cardinal role in a struggle where the masses are the pillars and the foundation of every democratic struggle people have been engaging in the mankind of history.
You know, Mr. Sikhala, you were a key player in the Citizens Coalition for Change. And from what I've read, during your incarceration, there are a number of separate narratives that they were very supportive of you during your incarceration. But I think there was an article by the Voice of America that quoted you as having said that they didn't support you with anything. So I want to ask you the question here. Is this organizing by the working group signaling a complete and total divorce from Nelson Chamisa, from the CCC, and the charting of a new political path for yourself?
I think if you could have followed my interviews from the beginning, when I came out of prison, when I was arrested on the 14th of June 2022, I was a senior official of the CCC. In its hierarchy, I was one of the senior officials who even chaired the meeting that led to the formation of the Citizens Coalition for Change. And I was also its member of parliament, a senior member of parliament. Not only that, the person for whom I was arrested for, More Blessing Ali, was also an activist belonging to the opposition. So, all in all, the political party that I was arrested for, when I came out of prison on the 30th of January 2024, I found out this political organization split into 3 different factions, squabbling and fighting. The foundation of their fights are known, but in complete disarray. So the issue which I observed is that I was not going to associate with neither of the 3 squabbling factions of the CCC. I simply said, this is not the reason why we are in a democratic struggle in our country. And I don't want to take any sides on your fights because I don't know what you are fighting for. Zimbabweans need to be united more than being divided at this hour, but I'm finding yourself fighting. I'm not going to partake in your fighting and so forth. So that is when the idea of going back to the people to consult them via the vehicle called the Zimbabwe National Democratic Working Group come into being. That we must re-engage and reconnect with the masses of our people. In the National Democratic Working Group, to answer you the question about Nelson Chamisa, we are prepared to work with everyone. Everyone who believes in democracy, somebody who believes on the supremacy of the people as the center of every democratic struggle in our country. We are prepared to work with any Zimbabwean who wants to see change in Zimbabwe. everyone who is dedicated and committed to respect the will of the people, somebody who espouses democratic values, where the will of the people is at the center, where the people become supreme than individuals. We are prepared to work with them. So to answer you in short and in brief about your question about Nelson Chamisa, we are prepared as long as he upholds the belief that we need to be democratic, we need to respect the will of the people, that the people are supreme than me, Job Sikhala, than you, John, and than any other person, and that the will of the people must be at the center of the struggle of the people of Zimbabwe.
Do you believe that Nelson Chamisa represents those aspirations for the people of Zimbabwe at this moment?
I cannot define an individual's aspirations. I think the best way is for you to ask him whether he...
No, I'm asking you. I'm asking you as his ally.
Yeah, of course. I don't want to discuss individuals. The moment when we reduce our struggle in Zimbabwe to center on individuals, we are defeating the entire process of a democratic struggle. The democratic struggle is a struggle that puts the masses at the center, where the whole entire struggle of the nation centers on the people. So centering on individuals has been the politics of the past. This is the politics that I had down the centuries on people like Stalin and so forth and the like. So I don't want to discuss about individuals.
No, the reason why I'm harping on about individuals is because like a spear has a tip, and the tip is the most dangerous part, right? And any movement, even one that you aspire to create via the working group, right, will eventually wind up in a process that then chooses a leader. And for the past number of years, at least to many in the African continent, Nelson Chamisa has represented that for at least, sections of the opposition. And this is why, because as a leader, he's made his attempts at becoming president to try and organize the opposition. And you come out of prison after having been his ally and find the party in disarray and find that, again, possibly you weren't supported by your party and your allies. This is why I ask, because it is an important question for many of his supporters, that...
Yeah, but also the other problem that I think you are facing is that if you could have been following the politics of Zimbabwe, my brother Nelson Chamisa has gone into retirement. He said, at the present moment, I've taken a sabbatical. I don't have anything to do with politics. So it makes no sense at all completely for me to bogle and discuss about him. Let him enjoy his sabbatical. Let him enjoy his retreat from politics. Let us not bring subjects. Otherwise, the things that are currently worrying me is the end of the democratic space in Zimbabwe. Yeah. How do the masses of Zimbabwe should respond to that? How ZANU-PF reacts to issues of human rights that are raised at the Geneva Conference are those fundamental issues that we must concentrate on. Yeah. On how the collapse of the economy and the change of currency at every turn, trying to turn around the economy which is failing, and the arrest of people who are trying to make their own living through legitimate business practices and so forth. These are things that must preoccupy ourselves, rather than for us to dwell on discussing individuals who have publicly pronounced that they are currently on leave and on sabbatical. Let them enjoy their leave and sabbatical.
And you'll carry on with
while we carry with the business that we think will answer the question of Zimbabwe.
You'd be carrying on this work against ZANU-PF, a party that has very deep roots and connections to even, the independence struggle, but one that has gone through a metamorphosis of sorts ever since the ouster of Robert Mugabe. And I want your response to some of the things that have been happening within ZANU-PF and generally the leadership of the country. And I'd like us to start with the military factor. You have, let's see, about 4 or 5, very key military men who've passed away in recent times. And you have Emmerson Mnangagwa seemingly defying the will of the military at the time of the coup to be a one-term president. how shaky or stable is Mnangagwa's, presidency on the grounds that possibly there might be quarters of the military that don't support him? What's your view of that?
We should never work on speculation on whether there is internal implosion within the ZANU-PF securocratic cluster, because we don't have empirical evidence about that. But what I know is that we should never ever think that the Zimbabwean army does not know its constitutional role and obligation. They know that their role and their constitutional role and obligation is for them to defend the sovereignty and the territory of Zimbabwe against enemy incursions. They also understand their role, that the core of the liberation struggle, why the liberation struggle was fought, was on the basis of a one man, one vote, which today we call it one person, one vote, on the basis of gender equality. I don't think they wouldn't understand that the people of Zimbabwe have got the right for them to make to make their own political choices. So internally, I would not say for the definite on what the relationship between Emmerson Mnangagwa and the military is, because I'm not privy to that. I don't have any concrete evidence or information that would inform me correctly about the internal intrinsications of the relationship between Emmerson and the military. They know each other. I think, as the commander-in-chief of the Zimbabwe Defense Forces, he knows his relationship with this army. But myself, I don't have any knowledge about his relationship between the two.
His deputy, Mr. Chiwenga, Constantino Chiwenga, was very crucial in the ouster of Robert Mugabe. And there are a number of military men within the leadership of ZANU-PF and in government that would be very key players, signaling that, that shift perhaps from almost purely political leadership to one that is tinged with the influence of the military. And the military is a very, very powerful force in any country, let alone Zimbabwe. Do you think, and I know that this is not up for speculation, but given the state of play and the number of characters who represent that side of Zimbabwe's politics on the board, looking forward to 2028, what is your view, given that you're also now trying to organize a people-led movement?
No, like what I told you in my previous answer. The role and duty of the military is well defined within our constitution.
Yes.
That they must be apolitical. Their role and duty is for them to protect the sovereignty of the nation.
But isn't that the point, that you have players like Constantino Chiwenga?
He opted politics.
You have a coup that took place that ousted Mugabe.
There is nothing that should stop a person who has been in the military jacket to be in politics if he is retired. Yeah, it happens everywhere. Yeah, so Constantino Chiwenga had resigned from the military, and he had the right for him to make a choice whether to join a public contestation for political office or not. But it doesn't define our military in Zimbabwe as such that they are all, political players. You cannot define every soldier in Zimbabwe as a political player, because these are professional forces of our nation, whom we believe for sure that in terms of protecting the sovereign and the territorial integrity of our nation, they are the best army ever you can find.
That's true.
I've got full confidence in our military, and in terms of their role, I don't see them having to play a political role in the next destiny of the nation. They are leaving it to us, political players, to determine the future of our country.
That may be true, Mr. Sikhala, but they did play a very major political role in the ouster of Robert Mugabe.
No, that one was a military coup. That one was a coup. Yes. Yeah, but I define it in terms of the current and the future political position. Yeah. That I now know that I now think that they know where they belong. that they belong to the barracks. They don't belong to civilian political activism. Political activism is left to us political players to contest on our own without their interference.
Speaking of the political contestations, there's now a move, I think, to amend the law in Zimbabwe to expand the term of parliamentarians. And I wanted your view on that, because that would seem to be a complete abrogation of what your constitution is at the moment. What's your view on that?
To be very frank with you, I don't think a normal person would hold such ambitions. It's too gigantic an ambition, which is unimaginable to any normal Zimbabwean. For them to think that they can simply amend the constitution, defeat the democratic principles of holding elections after every 5 years, extending their own term of office by themselves, being the people intending to benefit out of it, to change the constitution and extend their terms of office. I don't think anybody, any normal person, I'm telling you, I don't think any normal person with 5 senses would really contemplate doing that.
Yeah, but isn't that the sixth sense of a politician, self-interest? And that therein lies the issue.
I doubt very much if the self-interest instinct will defeat the logic of a normal human being for them to hold such impossible ambitions. Because definitely the reaction of the people, I don't think, will be positive to such an ambition.
I mean, that's very hopeful of a politician who's been in politics for more than 25 years to say that politicians wouldn't.
Yes, I've been a political leader. I've been in politics for almost 3 decades, and understanding my politics very well in Zimbabwe. I've been a very active political player. I don't think such ambitions will be achievable. They'll be extremely difficult.
And yet, this is the discussion in Zimbabwe today, and something that would be of benefit to Mnangagwa himself.
It's being speculated by ambitious people. Yeah, people must not be condemned for holding even wild ambitions.
Even a person who holds the presidency at this moment, to be as ambitious, to be associated with this kind of...
But I once read his interview. He was dissociating himself from this nonsense. He said he works within the parameters of the constitution. He even said, this is absolutely nonsense. I will never work to subvert the constitution of the nation. I live within the confines of the constitution, and I don't have those intentions.
No, this is the same Emmerson Mnangagwa who agreed to 1 term. How then do you believe that he would work within the confines of the constitution when such a move would be in his interest to extend his term?
The problem with working on speculation and on rumors, which are not supported by empirical evidence, we will always miss the truth. Where have you ever heard Mnangagwa saying that I am a 1-term president? I've never heard him saying that publicly. If it could have been a private arrangement between him and the people who carried out the coup, which did not come to the public domain, it was a secret and a private arrangement. But on the public domain, there was nothing like that we had. And I don't think, with the declaration that he made, that you will live within the confines of the dictates of the constitution, that you will not attempt to extend the term of office to beyond 2028. I think he was working within the parameters of a thoughtful individual. I don't think he will hold those ambitions to try the impossible of extending the term from 2028 and ahead. And because this thing will be viciously opposed by Zimbabweans.
Including yourself?
Of course. I will be the major player in opposing that. I will never allow that nonsense to happen in my country. Because we must live within the confines of the dictates of the Constitution and also democratic values. The Constitution says they were given a mandate from the 23rd of August to the 23rd, from the 23rd of August 2023 to the 23rd of August 2028. Yeah. So when their term of office has arrived, Zimbabweans must be given an opportunity to choose leaders of their own choice and let the will of the people carry the day. I'll be vicious opponent of such unparalleled ambitions. I will definitely, campaign heavily against such ambitions. But I believe, for the future of the nation, President Mnangagwa will not do that. Okay. Yeah, he will not do that. I don't think so. Okay. If he wants to be a man of integrity, he has already made a public pronouncement over that thing. He has said that he upholds the Constitution. He will never try to defeat the Constitution. And if he carries out his declarations on the interview that he held, that he will uphold the Constitution, you will live with some respect and dignity by the people of Zimbabwe.
Okay.
But if he wants to force himself and say that he wants to continue to 2030 without the mandate of the people, definitely that will damage a lot of his own public standing, not only in Zimbabwe, but in Africa and the whole world. Yeah. So I don't think you will do that. These are things that are being marketed by people with their own ambitions and people who are not confident of them surviving out the patronage of Emmerson Mnangagwa. I don't think President Mnangagwa will do that.
Okay.
Yes.
He has enough on his plate as we speak. And one of the major issues for Zimbabwe has been for over 2 decades now is the economy. Emmerson Mnangagwa is attempting yet another shift back to a Zimbabwean currency, the ZiG. And there is a lot of economic analysis about the potential of that ZiG to be able to turn around the economy, be able to stabilize the currency, the different currency flows that you've had for a number of years. Having analyzed this shift and what its possible impact on Zimbabwe's economy, do you think that this is a good move?
The introduction of the new currency, the ZiG, has not been welcomed by the majority of our people. Secondly, Zimbabwe is a multi-currency economic regime. There are many legal tenders in Zimbabwe that are on the national monetary basket. And ZiG seems to lack that confidence from the citizens of Zimbabwe that it will be able to sustain itself. Secondly, the way how they are trying to make it work via the persecution of people who are called money changers in Zimbabwe and so forth. The economics does not need force. You know, the economic markets will dictate the way how sustainable the new currency will be. As long as our production sector is not yet up to a competitive age, our export market is not sustainable. Still, the challenges remains. They are saying that ZiG means Zimbabwe gold. It's a currency that will be backed by the Zimbabwe gold, but we don't know how much tons of gold do we have in our reserves as the nation. As long as those things are not solved, we still have got difficulties. So the lack of confidence in the ZiG is something that is widespread within the nation of Zimbabwe. Yeah. They've got no confidence in that currency. Rather, it has become a caricature of the people's laughter. They laugh over it and so forth and the like. So there are more to do than merely just changing currency. In as far as the issues of economy is concerned, we need public confidence within our own monetary system. The economy has not been growing for a long time. People are suffering. It is also difficult for a person even to get a decent meal a day. Yeah. So there are still a lot of things to be done in as far as the question of our economy in Zimbabwe is concerned. Zimbabweans are suffering. 85% of our population is still unemployed. 49% of our people in the recent international survey said that they are living under extreme poverty. Extreme poverty is defined as a person who can spend the whole day without having a decent meal. This is the situation that we are currently having in Zimbabwe, and it means that our economy has not been growing. It has only benefited the few. The majority of our people are still suffering. They need a government who cares for their welfare and the development of our own country.
Job Sikhala, I have a few final questions for you, and I want to go back to those very dark days that began for you on June the 14th, 2022, your incarceration. And it's not an ordinary thing for a person who's been jailed 68 times or arrested 68 times to spend that amount of time in prison, even though that's become part of your own political brand, that you're not afraid to go into prison. Take me to the most difficult moment that you had while you were in prison, the darkest time, and what that...
No, that was the period when they were refusing my family and my friends and colleagues to visit me. I did not want to consume prison food on the basis that dirty tricks could be applied against myself. So when they tried to refuse visits from my family and tried to cut me off from the world, it was that period when I became extremely very angry. And also when I became sick. And you have to understand that when I was in prison, I was always kept in chains, like a terrorist by this regime. And when I became sick, I was taken to hospital, kept on chains, on a hospital bed. When I was even on a sleeping dose. When I was dead, you know, sleeping dose can take hours while you are asleep. But I was still in chains. Unbelievable. Some of the treatments that was done to me when I was inside a single caged solitary confinement, you could not expect them to be done to a human being in the 21st century. These are some of the things that we are exposing to the world. And also something that the regime is not understanding is, I am not bitter about being persecuted in prison, but I will be bitter if they want to stop me from speaking out the experiences that I faced on their own faces, which were meted on me by them. That is when I will really be bitter. They must allow me to speak my story. It's me who suffered. It's me who knows the story of what was happening to me. I must be allowed by the world and the people of Zimbabwe for me to speak out my own experience. No one experienced it except me.
Yeah.
So they must allow me to speak out of the experience which I have gone through their own hands.
What happens if they don't allow you? What happens if they carry out the arrest?
Come on, they cannot silence me. They cannot silence me, I'll continue speaking.
They could silence you by taking you back to prison.
I don't care. Do you think if they could have arrested me 68 times and they've kept me in pre-trial incarceration for almost 2 years, do you think I could care to be arrested today? Let's be frank. Do you think I'm afraid of being arrested today when they've arrested me 68 times?
Do you?
When they have tortured me all my body parts in 2003, which is a well-documented experience that I went through that regime. And they have kept me in pre-trial incarceration for almost 2 years. Do you think I would be afraid to be arrested today? It's up to them.
If you're
it's their own baby to see what they can do about that.
If you're not bitter, what are you right now? What would you describe as your emotional reaction to that incarceration? If it's
no,
not
it's simply just to be an honest and genuine campaigner for human rights issues, not only in Zimbabwe, but throughout the world. The Geneva Summit has really assisted me in that I have been able to have links with worldwide prominent human rights players of the world. I've been able to be in contact with top lawyers, top world lawyers. I've been able to be in contact with the, diplomats and also prime ministers and heads of state. So it is an experience that has given me the opportunity to have worldwide linkages, to which it has assisted me. It will assist me tomorrow in my human rights work, in my also human rights campaign work. Yeah. So it is very important. So specifically like what I say, I am not bitter at all, but I must be allowed to speak out my story. The experience is mine. Yeah. It's not anyone's experience. No. So people must allow me to speak out what happened to me. And if you don't know, allowing somebody to speak out his experience is part and parcel of the healing process many people should go through for them to be completely healed of the evil experience they have encountered in their lives. So allow me to speak my story. Don't stop me.
Okay. I have two final questions. What should people expect when you touch down at Robert Mugabe International?
Nothing much. That I will just come to do my work as a lawyer, and also helping the National Democratic Working Group as its facilitator to conduct its legitimate and constitutional activity in the nation, and to carry out the duties of consulting the Zimbabweans on what they want the future of their nation to be like, and that's all.
Nelson Chamisa is on sabbatical. The CCC is in disarray. Are we looking at the next contender for the presidency of Zimbabwe?
The next contender of the national presidency of Zimbabwe will come from the people. Never shall we impose ourselves upon the people of Zimbabwe.
So if the people choose you, will you accept that call? If the people choose that Job Sikhala is our next contender for the presidency, will you respond to that call?
Who will refuse the call of the people? The voice of the people is the voice of God. If the people will ask me to do that, I will accept it with two open hands. There is no doubt about that, because it could be their voice. Yeah, but if they say don't, I will not.
Okay.
Yeah, so I will wait for the will of the people.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Job,
thank you
very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
All right, and all the best in your travels. And we'll look forward to what happens when you get back.
Thank you very much,
Zimbabwe.
John.
Thank you very much for joining us.